What happens when you assemble thousands of the world's smartest minds, entrepreneurs, scientists, and engineers, back them with essentially limitless money measuring in the trillions of dollars, and point them in one direction? Progress. What happens if the goal they are assembling themselves to pursue is the following? Replace human intelligence with silicon intelligence. Massive redundancy in essentially all sectors where the jobs involve inputting and outputting creative content through a computer, or data synthesis and analytics, writing things online, or pattern matching and problem solving, like in what I do, medicine, if it all goes to plan. So, we lay off knowledge workers, or keep most of the incumbents around to supervise the AI and attempt to pattern match the so-called slop versus the high-quality outputs, and stop replacing them with human talent. Side note, regarding being a manager of AI, for now, that might remain a human job, because humans, at the moment, are better at representing human taste. However, that will all end when AI, or if AI, becomes reliably better at predicting human tastes and responses to its own outputs, which it will become better at because it has better memory, more capacity to receive multiple inputs, and doesn't take breaks or allow its emotions, of which it has none, to cloud its judgments. Just pattern recognition. This advert will land with this demographic of audience, or this antibiotic prescription makes the most sense given all the data we have on record for that person with this cough. What happens next? Mass unemployment of people who have taken on massive amounts of debt acquiring skills that will become redundant when AI becomes either consistently better at the same task, or similarly competent but always available everywhere for a fraction of the cost. We know this is happening in, well, everywhere. Take the recent news story about the guy who sold Twitter to Elon Musk and serial tech entrepreneur Jack Dorsey. He runs a financial technology company called Block, and he's just announced he's laying off 40% of the company, or 4,000 workers, because AI can do their jobs. Suddenly, there are 4,000 previously well-paid software engineers, programmers, and the like, who no longer have an employer or a salary, doing things like contributing to a pension, providing health insurance, or even putting bread on the table. These people, and many of them are highly intelligent, highly educated, and competitive, are suddenly driven or flushed out into the job seekers market, but their technical skills and expertise are all of a sudden a lot less in demand. Do they find a lower paid job in the same field, or do they re-educate and enter another sector? Let's take the latter. Immediately we run into two problems. Who's paying for this re-education? And who's hiring? First, education. Governments around the world are dealing with all of the following major expense headwinds: growing debt burdens, meaning the amount of their income they need to spend on servicing debt interest increases each year; an increasing dependency ratio of retirees to working age people, meaning more and more of the population are expected to become net contributors to the government purse rather than net beneficiaries in the younger generation, as the older generation, which gets ever larger as the boomers retire, swells its ranks of people who will be a net expenditure for the government rather than a net source of income. And we are re-entering a global climate wherein governments are having to relearn why it was that medieval kings and queens used to tax their subjects all the way up to their eyeballs to fund wars. And as we saw in Ukraine, not being aggressive or threatening is not a guaranteed success strategy in avoiding military conflicts. So let's get real. Not many governments are in a financial position to back the reskilling of their population at meaningful scale. And there's the question of, what would you reskill in anyways? The disruption so far has followed something of a pattern. Disruption tends to fail to hit deadlines again and again, and then arrive all at once. And it tends to be most aggressive in domains where AI, or artificial intelligence, is at home. Pattern recognition on a computer. With the closer the domain being to pure logic, the easier it is for AI to outcompete humans. The more logical inconsistencies, hypocrisy, and emotional carry-on you can throw in to a domain, the longer it will take for AI to outperform humans. Also, the more erratic and unpredictable the problems, the harder it is to train AI through a lack of reproducible, repetitive data. And the more something requires complex manipulation of real, non-computerized objects through time and space, the less prone to AI disruption the industry is under current circumstances. Though killer AI drones would be a notable exception to this. retraining as a sniper or assassin, for example, is unlikely to reward you handsomely now that militaries can just throw 500 suicide drones at a problem. So, you got to reckon with AI being a faster learner that doesn't sleep, eat, or have to wash the dishes. There are few guarantees that the field you retrain in will have a growing demand for human workers by the time you are trained. The second issue is that of who is hiring. Answer: hardly anyone. How can I say this so confidently? Well, unfortunately, it was bad news in the most recent monthly US jobs report for non-farming jobs, wherein the US government's Bureau for Labor Statistics just announced that in the month of January 2026, the US labor market lost 92,000 jobs. So, despite some small growth in financial and other services and retail and wholesale trade, the overall picture is not rosy, with professional services, transportation and warehousing, construction, IT, manufacturing, hospitality, and even health services, despite that growing dependency ratio of older people to younger people, all racking up job losses in January. So, as the title of this video suggests, we have a problem. Our ability to use work as a meaning maker in our lives is predicated on two main factors. One, there is a market out there that recognizes our capabilities and pays us enough for them that having a job materially improves the living standards and opportunities of us and our own. And two, the work that we get to do feels intrinsically meaningful because it wouldn't have gotten done anyway, and potentially better and at greater scale had we not been there to do it. In today's episode of Signal Over Noise, I, Owen Evans, as a general practitioner or family medicine doctor, as you might say in America, who deals much more in pattern matching and data analysis than in putting scalpels and tubes into people, hope to provide some answers on where meaning can be found for those of us, myself and my co-host and data analyst brother, Sam Evans, included, who feel that our heads might already be on the chopping block, wondering if and when the AI job apocalypse guillotine might drop on us. Now, a quick disclaimer. This might not actually happen, and there might be a ceiling that we reach, and it might be an alternative future scenario in which it's those that harness AI that take the jobs of those that don't, and it's not AI then taking their jobs in turn. It may also be that Jack Dorsey was announcing 4,000 layoffs, and the best way to make it seem like this was a good idea and a well-run company that needed to lay off people was to talk about AI. That sort of borne out in the data, sort of what happened next. The stock of the company went up 20%, but analysts have said, a well-performing company should use AI at the moment as an adjunct or additional arms and legs for its current employees and expand its money-making businesses rather than use it to lay off a lot of its employees. And there's a lot of talk that actually a lot of their expansion interests are into stable coin and cryptocurrency markets that aren't proving particularly lucrative right now. So, regardless of whether or not that little thing from Jack Dorsey was a smokescreen designed to make himself seem clever and to boost the stock price of his company, if you've stuck with us until this stage, then you will know that the scenario outlined, where AI replaces most of the knowledge sector jobs without conjuring up new ones, has a non-zero probability of happening and is of significant enough magnitude and potential scale that it merits taking seriously. And that's what we're going to do today. The road forward seems uncertain, but if we understand what AI is, we can understand what it isn't, where its most obvious limitations are, and go and seek a role providing something of worth there. What AI is a sophisticated computer program that attempts to apply intelligence to solve problems without applying what always comes along for the ride whenever us humans apply our brains to solve a problem with our own intelligence, which is our emotions and our empathy and all that soft, gooey biology that comes along for the ride. We have these things called mirror neurons that allow us to feel how another person feels. Computers, and hence AI, don't. Large language models are data processing and analytics tools that consistently iterate and refine a response to a query. They seek to improve the agreeability of a set of words in response to another set of words. Obviously, in a lot of domains, humans are pretty much doing something that looks a lot like this. Take, for example, customer service agents. They seek to respond to customers in the most agreeable way possible, whilst serving their paymasters' interests. See ChatGPT. At the moment, many of the AI platforms' paymasters all agree that the most important thing to do right now is prove usefulness to as many people across as much of their lives as possible to grow market share. If they follow the social media model, the next stop will be to become as addictive as possible to make us passive consumers of torrents of online advertising. Or perhaps they'll follow a subscription model. Down that path, their incentives will be to prove themselves useful enough, or enjoyable enough, or addictive enough for us to keep on subscribing and paying month after month. They are supercalculators. They can crunch numbers and process data points at scales incomprehensible to us humans. They can, if the servers are not attacked, have perfect memories. So attempting to work in a field where memory recall or repetitive calculations are a cornerstone is going to be a losing strategy. Unfortunately, this is a lot of our careers. Let's take a brief aside to explore areas you might be able to outrun AI in, where AI will likely become superior much later on, and you'll get some more breathing space before getting into the meat of the sandwich, how to matter in a domain that AI is not coming for. Here are some of the recesses and alcoves that I can see where we can hide within the knowledge or brain economy. Extremely high trust roles, such as being a lawyer or a judge, because AI is novel and new, and for most of us, headquartered somewhere overseas and run by not particularly nice seeming billionaires who don't have our interests at heart, there's going to be a preference for people local, with a face, with skin in the game, and with potential dire consequences to their own reputation, or the possibility of going to jail if they fail to be an upstanding person of good character. And there's not yet a legal precedent for AI and its owners being held accountable for its failures. So we may choose to use our local doctor or lawyer for a while longer, not necessarily because they're more intelligent or have better memories, because they don't on both accounts, but because A, we can better read and understand their motivations, and B, the mere fact that we can ruin their lives by suing their asses for mistakes means that they are likely to be more careful about not committing egregious errors. Another area, in my opinion, is government. Governments are an employer that serves many roles that do not ultimately boil down to returning money in the form of profit to the owners. So they're less heavily incentivized to adopt AI on a cost-effectiveness basis. Because they are asked to be fiscally responsible, yes, but also to create jobs and opportunities for the residents and to uphold some level of standards as a decent employer. The third area that I can think of is the artisanal route. If you're a producer of collectibles, be they watches, figurines, or paintings, then the value of what you produce can often be inversely correlated with output and totally detached from input costs, and therefore the scalability and the fractional cost compared to an employee of an AI agent becomes irrelevant. If you can find a form of art or a market to sell to where scarcity is valued, or human craftsmanship and inherent imperfections baked in, venerated, then you can continue to earn an income in the creative arts. Or perhaps in sport, where, well, I'm not sure that it's a sport, but in competition, where, for example, AI is a lot better at chess, but it's still more entertaining and engaging to watch humans have at it. And the same would probably be true of race car driving or something like that right now. I'm not sure. Anyway, at least on the computer design front, which will come to be dominated by AI, the writing's on the wall unless you can find a niche which values your individuality and your humanity. That's that. Thoughts, Samuel, before we move on to the meat of the sandwich. How to outhuman AI to continue to generate purpose and meaning after peak AI job apocalypse.
A peak AI job apocalypse sounds incredibly daunting. I was going to maybe bring this one and particularly our users' anxiety levels down a notch or two. But just in the temporary line, let's say. So in the tech industry, the roles we have that are safest, as just said, there are things that actually require high social and emotional intelligence. Things like product managers, user researchers, and analysts. Their patterns of work are less predictable than software engineers, particularly junior software engineers, that is. These more human-focused roles require high degrees of social, emotional intelligence. They are at the interface between technology and people. there are a lot of niche specific non-standard problems that need solving as well, like you said. Things that just don't necessarily follow standard patterns and therefore don't have a lot of training data. So for now, AI is limited by a few things. For example, context as well. Ever notice how when you talk to ChatGPT, the quality of your prompt, it's a direct correlation to the quality of the output. So for now, the LLMs are not listening to every conversation you have at work. And if you've ever read the like meeting summaries generated by AI, they're actually not very good at being able to read human emotion and feelings. And sometimes you get the most random things in there. They're very good at technical detail because that's quite like binary and technical. And you can tell like that is a technical comment or not. But the reason I'm making this point is perhaps in the future, or perhaps as we make way for this very gloomy outlook on of job apocalypse, maybe there are opportunities for you to move into an adjacent role in your current company that could give you the headspace to be able to retrain or reposition yourself based on Owen's playbook for outhumaning AI. Just to bear that in mind, won't be like a sudden drop off. Hey, everyone's lost their jobs. Maybe this is the right time to move into one of these adjacent roles that are a little bit secure for now and maybe won't remain secure in the long term. So yeah, how do I find myself a new job or a new role that is safe long term?
Yeah, and we'll get into there that long term security regarding a meaning maker, because it's not necessarily going to be your job for a lot of people. A lot of people, I guess, their job is something they do for those indirect benefits of what they can use their salary to do. And then they've got their direct meaning makers outside of work. I was just thinking a little tangent. You were talking about how when the AI is generating meeting summaries that they suck at interpreting human emotions and feelings, I do think that if we do choose to allow for a surveillance state in which they can watch us at the meetings, they will get quite good quite fast. A friend of mine who's training to be a psychiatrist, we had a conversation and she felt very self-assured that her job was sticking around. And I kind of thought, pattern matching how people give away their emotional state and being able to read that seems actually something that AI could be really flipping good at. And that being said, on the flip side, our Britishness might help because this friend of mine is from Poland, and she learned English and she moved to London and she studied medicine. And one of the things that she said was hardest about learning English is then learning to speak English with English people. And so much of the language is in what is unsaid or tone of voice and those sorts of things, which are harder to get the data on. Most of the data that's being processed is written word data that scrubs it of its tone. And therefore it can lose its actual true meaning. How many serious arguments or relationship breakdowns have occurred because of the misinterpretation of a text, where something was a joke or sarcastic, but it was not interpreted as such because it was a text. Anyway, there's still hopefully going to be something of value for those psychiatrists out there who feel like it's not coming for them soon, because who knows? It just might be. I don't think actually that many people predicted successfully the course or the route that AI developments have taken so far, and we are just one amongst the masses that will get it wrong this time.
Just building that, I do wonder. I think there's a moment in time in the not too distant future, like I've come across a few people who have started to wear dongles around their neck to effectively record their whole day. Don't get me wrong, I think I would be put off a little bit if someone came to me wearing one of these dongles and wanted to talk to me. I feel like a bit of an invasion of privacy, and I don't really know how other people would interact with those people. But yeah, there are even brands now. It's not even like that niche. There are even brands that will allow you to get a little like recorder on a little thing, which is like set up and ready to go into ChatGPT, as opposed to just like an old school tape recorder thingy. But yeah, pretty wild. That side is coming, but also you're right. I imagine that's being translated directly into a transcript. So at least tone of voice. And yeah, as you say, maybe our Britishness can keep it at bay a little bit longer. We'll see.
Yeah, by being so oblique and opaque in everything we say and do, and,
Yeah.
talking one way and walking another, all that stuff. Anyway, yeah, and I guess another point there is we've spoken in the past about how we have these Paleolithic brains and these medieval institutions and these space age technologies. The legislation will lag. The monitoring and recording everything that happens in your entire day and then uploading it to AI and then using that to, I don't know, generate a review of the day and who you should be hanging out with more and who you should hang out with less. That will come first. And then governments will have to think about whether or not we want to live in a society where that happens. Obviously, there's a Silicon Valley culture of asking for forgiveness rather than asking for permission. And it's that Silicon Valley venture capital energy that's driving all this thing. Anyway, we don't want to spend too much time staring into the AI abyss, do we? Else it might stare back.
Scary place, yeah.
Yeah. We're trying to keep this positive, upbeat, and something of a tonic for those who maybe
Yeah.
have overindulged in AI doomerism. That may have myself included in that number. Without further ado, let us get on and deliver
Could we
that
just
meat of the
requote that
sample.
one? I've got to quote you there, Owen. Let's make the news of massive job losses positive. I'll let you move forward with your next statements.
Well, I think an important historic frame was when it seemed an impossibility, it was like venerated as the most prestigious and awesome potential human good was to make us all redundant and not have to do work. So it wasn't that long ago that economists were talking about how wonderfully liberating technology could become and how we could all be working a 15-hour working week, and wouldn't that be awesome? And think of all the things we could do with our free time. It's only now that we're staring down the barrel and thinking, oh, this might actually happen, that we're realizing actually there might be some unintended consequences, some unforeseen consequences, an asymmetry in how the work is divvied up, which is to say that it's not that everyone is going to be equally affected and everyone's going to be willing to share and give up 25 of their paid hours of work per week, such that we can all have a 15-hour sort of thin layer or spread. Those that retain leverage to negotiate a good wage are going to continue to do that. And those whose skill sets get trampled on are no longer going to have. Did we say something about keeping it upbeat and positive? Let's get into maintaining meaning and purpose, or even perhaps finding meaning and purpose out the other side. It all starts with a simple question. How can we provide more value to others than AI does? Well, we've got to focus on the two following principles. One, doing embodied work, because AI is yet to integrate intelligence with effective IRL or in real life actions. And two, relational work, because AI has no emotions or capacity to emphasize, to integrate into and meld with its intelligence. So here's the play. Out human AI. Don't attempt to out AI or out I the AI. Embodied work is all about using our physical assets and our integrated computational, emotional, and physical systems. At its most obvious, this could be roles like masseuse and hairdresser.
Hold on, I'm not getting my hair cut by a robot.
No, fair enough. Or your beard, I imagine. So to find the niches here, ask yourself, throughout my day or my week, where do I interact with humans? And at each of these interaction points, how important is it that they are human? What's good about a human barber holding that cutthroat razor to your jugular rather than a robot? Well, humans are more likely, on average, to value human life and value not spending theirs in prison. Perhaps there will come a time where this is all that's good about your human doctor or lawyer. They've got skin in the game and are deeply invested in not stuffing things up. So
We're going to continue the positiveness there, I see.
it's the embodied work as to doing the relational work thing. So that's focusing on developing, deepening, strengthening relationships with other emotionally integrated intelligences for what that's worth. How we might go about doing embodied and relational work, I'll give you a couple of ideas or themes as to how we might want to go about doing that to find and maintain meaning. Start by selling yourself a believable story with yourself as an integral cog or key player in the story. Joseph Campbell, who's a now dead dude whose name gets thrown around a lot by basically everyone in Hollywood as the driving force behind just about every good movie or the story they're in, wasn't a screenwriter, just a devoted studier of myths and stories, who attempted and seems to have succeeded in defining a hero's journey. It's a case of someone acting in response to their environment and circumstances to pursue a goal that is somewhat hard and of great importance, and learning and developing as they go. So, define your story and try and make it matter on as many of the levels of reality as possible. Now, what are those levels of reality? I hear you ask. There's three: the objective, the subjective, and the intersubjective. Objective reality is things that simply are, regardless of what we think about them or the stories we tell. For example, objects that have mass exert an attractive force on each other. We happen to call it gravity, but it doesn't matter what we call it. It happens whether we're looking or not, whether we care or not, or whether we've learned about it or not. That is objective reality. And we know that this force increases with the mass of each object and decreases with the distance of separation between them. Next, there's the subjective level of reality. What stories are true because I believe them to be true? This could be watering the pot plants thrice weekly is important to me and proves that I'm capable of compassion and caring. Then there's the intersubjective level of reality. Stories that are true because many of us believe them and share that belief in them. Cheering for a sports team means more when other fans also agree that it's important, and can become awfully farcical when it seems like you're the only fan paying attention. Paper money is worth something if everyone involved in the exchange agrees that it is so. Be the hero of a story that acts to make a positive impact across at least two of those three levels of reality. Why? Because they're mutually reinforcing. The plant watering, being subjectively important, is reinforced by the objective reality of those same plants not dying as a consequence of your watering them. The importance of money as a shared story we all believe in is reinforced by your individual affinity for the stuff or known history of having used it for good utility. Monitor for success within your story, revise or reinforce it, and definitely write the story down. By listing who you are, who you want to become, and what you want to do, and why, you will have a document from which you can easily derive your values. By acting again and again in accordance with these values and seeing if you can play a role that AI couldn't do better at affecting the outcomes or actions you deem important, you will become the hero of your own journey. By writing the story down, you set the goalposts in concrete, such that you cannot just rip them up and move them every time you accomplish something that former you would have deemed worthwhile, with the potential risk of dismissing it out of hand as you pursue ever loftier goals, because it's easier and faster to generate new ideas or expectations than it is to fulfill them. Writing down your story and rewriting it once it's completed forces you to sit with your successes, reflect on them, and appreciate them. This is going to make us feel like we matter as a product of having done something that matters, and that is a good thing. And at the end of the day, if mattering is what really matters, wouldn't it be good to enjoy a few brief moments feeling like we matter? Samuel.
Matter. Sorry. No, awesome. Awesome. I was just thinking, as you come to write the story, perhaps you need to think a little bit about how the story's going to go, what direction it's going to go in. And maybe one of the things that could help you there is by doing an ikigai. We talked about it in the past. And more specifically, the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's two variables in the ikigai that have changed if we fast forward to the job apocalypse. Number one is the variable that is what people will pay for. And number two, what the world needs. And we've been over a couple of these already. So in the future, we assume people will not pay people to drive their taxi. once Waymo has been rolled out. And perhaps this means a large chunk of the workforce is going to have to retrain. But perhaps that's an opportunity. Maybe that's to help teach them, help upskill them. Maybe that's consulting, teaching, course creator. Or perhaps, all this takes a lot of energy and power. And frankly, there's a bit of a problem with the climate right now. So maybe you could help with rolling out green energy the world needs. All of this is to say, perhaps you could use the Ikigai as a way to find the destiny, the journey of that story, and just to reconsider any assumptions that you may have made that may not necessarily be true anymore, based on those two quadrants of what the world will pay for and what the world needs now, as we look towards the job apocalypse. Yeah, but just think about the other two quadrants there as well. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What are the things you'd like to work on in the future? Perhaps there's something in that meets all of these quadrants now that you could throw yourself into. So yeah, check out the Ikigai episode we did in the past. Perhaps if you want to check and try and find out what your life's purpose is, and you can position that as the destination of the hero of your story. So yeah, hopefully that'll help you find the destination for your hero's story. Straight back to you. Let's wrap it up, Bo.
Yeah, let's do that. And let's also celebrate, perhaps this could be a timely perhaps a silver lining of those forced to face potentially what seems like a very threatening and potentially distressing ordeal of figuring out what they're going to do professionally moving forwards, having thought that it was going to be something that's perhaps the option's going to be taken off the table for human workers, is that we're presented with this opportunity to perhaps do a little bit less sleepwalking and a little bit more intentional design of what I think is a very important part of our lives, which is figuring out how we can align our actions and our energy and the time that we have available to us with what we ourselves deem to be good and meaningful endeavors. And I think a bit of an analogy is I heard Alan de Botton, the School of Life philosopher, talking about how there was some study somewhere that suggested 70% of our life satisfaction will be derived by the strength of our relationships. And he said that it was therefore absurdly imbalanced at what tiny percentage of our time and energy we actually spend investing in these relationships and deepening them. I know that there are some, financial constraints for a lot of us. But yeah, we don't think long and hard about who we need to be building relationships with and why, and which ones are, feel deeper or more rewarding. We usually sort of muck in with who's around, or we pick one spouse and throw all of our eggs in that basket.
Yeah, I like that actually. It's kind of like a reframing. Obviously, it's not particularly healthy to get all of one's like meaning and worth from work in the first place. But secondly, like just a nice like timely reminder that perhaps actually from a psychological perspective, we shouldn't be, because our brains are not engineered in that way. So that's really interesting. Of course, heavily caveated with the fact that we're worried about being able to put bread on the table here. But yeah, interesting take. Right, Doctor.
Yeah, let's take away what we've sort of discussed. Focus on finding areas we can out-human AI. Where we appreciate that human touch, that authenticity, maybe it's compassion, humility, humor, whatever it is. Author a story where acting at this human first position matters. Set goals that are consistent with our values or become our values. Review and celebrate our accomplishments of these goals. And then, do it again and again. And as we've discussed, we can then think about doing it again and again across as many domains of our lives as possible, not just the professional. Why? Well, let's view our sense of meaning, purpose through the metaphor of a stool. If we have meaning and purpose only sourced from work, then this stool has one leg. How sturdy is the stool? How likely is it to weather a storm? What if the work goes away? Let us instead build more legs for the stool. Let's out-human AI in our family. Easy. Show up, play games, interact, share experiences. Let's out-human AI in our romantic relationship. Again, easy. Display compassion and compassionate touch and/or erotic touch. and show up for your partner in the real world. Be something they can be proud of relating to and dating. Because let's face it, nobody is taking Gemini or Copilot out to a fancy restaurant, dressing them up and showing off that fish that they've reeled in. Next, let's out-human AI in our local community. Join the Lions Club, plant a tree, go on a group litter pick. These activities all contribute meaningfully to the society within which you exist and cannot be outcompeted by AI. And okay, maybe humanoid robots will be along shortly to do those litter picks, but, well, we're covering that one in a future episode. So that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you've gotten something out of this, please share it with somebody else who also needs to hear a bit of human first speciesism amongst all the AI news. And until next time, be well and do good.
Lovely job, like.